Welcome to True Grape. Our pick this week is the Burge Miamba Shiraz 2008 vintage from Barossa Valley in Australia, and retails for $28.99. And we're very fortunate to be joined by Burge himself. Welcome to Edmonton.
Yeah, thank you. It's excellent to be here.
Grant, tell us a little bit about Barossa Valley, because your family's been in the Barossa since the mid-1800s, really. Tell us a little bit about the history of how your family got there, and how'd you get into the wine business?
The family came to the Barossa. We're an English family, although most of the Barossa is probably of German descent. It was an English colony and so forth, and it was a private company set up in London, and you bought shares in the company, and then ultimately that gave you the right to come out and take up land in the Barossa, a pound a share, and each share that you had, you could come out and take up an acre of land. Anyway, our family came out because John Burge, my great-great-grandfather, married Eliza Springbut, and the Springbuts had bought land in Barossa and started viticulture. They were promoting that, and so they planted vines and started making wine. The wine didn't turn out very good, so they asked their daughter and son-in-law to come out and help them, and he'd actually travelled Europe, and wine had become a bit of a hobby, and so he knew a bit more about winemaking than most English people. So they obviously thought he would be able to help them, so that's what happened. So that's how we ended up in the Barossa in 1855.
Fantastic. So what is it about the Barossa Valley that makes this region so great for Shiraz? Because Barossa Shiraz has really become one of the most famous styles of wine in the world.
Yeah, no, well, I think that, Barossa is a very traditional Mediterranean climate, so we get our rainfall in the winter and the springs, and so we don't get a lot of summer rain, so it's a very disease-free area. I mean, it's probably made out to be a bit warmer than it is. Last year we only had 7 days over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, so it was quite a mild and cool year there. And then, of course, we're incredibly fortunate in South Australia. We've never had phylloxera, one of the only places left in the world. So we not only have young vines or medium-term vines, we have very old vines, like 100 years old sort of vines. So we've got this great diversity of the vines. And these old vines really do make some magnificent old Shiraz, but so do the young vines, but not quite of the same stature or character, but they still make exceptionally good wine. And
for this particular wine, an interesting story about the Miamba vineyard, which you purchased, and it was actually nothing there first.
Yeah, it's a very historic vineyard. Probably was 100 years old before we purchased it, but it was owned by a previous wine company, and typical accountants started saying, well, it's not, it's not profitable, so start cutting costs. And of course they started cutting costs, and then it became less profitable because the tonnage went down to eventually it was no ton, so they said pull everything out, and so the whole vineyard was ripped out, and it was just doing nothing. So I approached them and said, oh, could I lease it to run a few sheep on? And there were still big piles of dead grapes and so forth, and we sort of decided to clean it up a bit, but it wasn't our property, so we didn't clean it up too much. And then when my lease ran out at the end of 3 years, they said, oh, well, we're selling it. And we offered them a price to buy it, and they wouldn't accept it. They said, oh no, it must go to auction, and so forth. Well, that actually turned out to be a godsend, because I bought it at auction at a hell of a lot less than what I'd actually offered to buy it, just as a private sale. So yeah, I was very, very happy to have it. Then in Australia, it's essential you have a water source. So I sunk some bores and found water, and then I didn't need a lot of grapes at the time. But I did plant a little bit of a vineyard, and but then when in the early 90s or before that, we could see that export was going to take off. I made the decision to actually gradually replant the whole property again, which we've done now. Thank goodness I did actually sink the bores and start using a little bit of that water, because just as we're about to replant the whole lot, they brought in a moratorium on any more bores and any more water that could be used. But luckily, I'd made a financial commitment and I got the licence for the whole property, but I could never do that again. So I was very fortunate that I did decide to plant a few vines, otherwise I would have missed out entirely. And it's now my biggest vineyard, not only sort of in area, but it's a natural for Shiraz. Even though they're now about 25 years old, but even when they were quite young, we're really starting to produce some magnificent fruit.
Fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and taste the wine.
Yeah. This is the 08, which I haven't actually seen for a little while. We're selling 2010 now, but this has really got the benefit of a couple of years bottle age. 08 was a funny vintage. We had a heat wave. Any winemaker tells you took the grapes off after the heat waves, not telling you quite the truth, because after the heat wave there were no grapes left, so they all came off before the heat wave, and so would this have. But with that, you know, a couple of years in bottle age now, that's really starting to show it. It's a big wine, and but it's also starting to show a nice aroma of, you know, chocolate and coffee and quite a complexity.
And great length as well.
Yeah, well, Barossa Shiraz really has got lots of flavours, and if it is from a good stock and well made, it will always have really good length of flavour, and this is sort of no exception. We mature this in about 50% new oak and 50% 2-year-old American oak. American oak's really improved out of sight in the last 15 years, and you don't get the sort of real coconut flavours anymore. You get really nice, sweeter, sort of vanilla characters, but not quite as overt as they used to be. So they do really sit back in the wine and just complement the wine rather than sort of, you know, to be too sort of obvious. And so this is really well balanced between, you know, nice, you know, fruit characters, but also some nice complexity from that oak.
What sort of ageability would you say this wine has?
Oh, this one's easily a 10-year proposition. Probably for those real enthusiasts who like to push it a little bit and like an aged wine. I mean, this probably wine will still be good drinking at 12, 13 years old. But when it's sort of from now to its 10 years, it'll really, really, you know, it'll reward those who want to keep it for a little while, who like a little bit of development. This is now 4 years old and just showing the first signs of a little bit of development. You can catch a little bit of that sort of bottle development and a little bit of sort of what I call a leatheriness that, you know, all Shirazes get with a bit of age. Barossa Shiraz get with a bit of age. You know, our even bigger wines than this just take a bit longer, whereas this wine is just starting to show it now at 4 years.
Pretty good value for a wine that you can lay down for a decade. What would you recommend for food pairings with this?
Well, it's a bigger, fuller style, so it's definitely you know, beef and probably you know, pork as well, and I mean, this one's got plenty of flavour, so, you know, a fuller style, you know, I mean, even chicken to a degree, although that's probably a little bit, but for those who like chicken, you know, this wine would still go well with them, but any of the fuller meat dishes, it'll go very well with.
Fantastic. Well, our pick again this week is the Burge Miamba Shiraz 2008 vintage from the Barossa Valley in Australia, and retails for $28.99. Thanks, Grant. Cheers.
Yeah, good. Cheers.